Hi guys, I wanted to take a few minutes and talk to you about Chapter 7 and what you can expect getting into this week with the nervous system. Last week was a doozy. It was a very hard chapter with the muscles, and this week I wish I could say it was a little easier, but it's not. It's pretty much along the same lines in terms of complexity as last week's was. So just going through the chapter, it's really important to understand the overall organization of the central nervous system. So the graphic that's on page 193 is really good to take a look at. Maybe even kind of make your own note cards and see if you can arrange the note cards in the correct kind of position as that graphic organizer that's there on page 193. That way you can understand the feedback loops and how everything is organized. Really complex structure there. Page 194 has the drawing of the neuron. You'll see models of these in lab, and you will get to, it's my dog, sorry, you will get to take a look at that more closely on the models. You may want to redraw it. There's different types of neurons. You need to be familiar with all of those as well. Then you see the different types of neuroglia that's on page 196. You need to know all of those and the functions of those, obviously, and then the events and an action potential. This is where it gets kind of linked to what we were doing in the last chapter with the muscular system. So you have this kind of interplay between neurons and muscles at the neuromuscular junction, but you also have an interplay between neurons and other neurons, and that's mostly what we're looking at here. And so you're looking at the depolarization, repolarization, the actual values of those things, what's happening with the sodium and the potassium, the different channels, the different gates. A really good diagram to make a flowchart out of. Then you get into the process of synaptic transmission on page 198. Same idea as the neuromuscular junction, this whole signal coming down and being transposed into a postsynaptic cell. Then you have the basic reflex arc, or the communication between what's going on, say, in your hands and in your upper central nervous system. So that pathway can be diagrammed out as well on a flowchart. Then we get into the actual brain, the meninges, the flow of cerebrospinal fluid, another opportunity for you to create a flowchart or a diagram, actually kind of putting a visual to that flow of CSF. Then you have all of the parts of the brain. You need to know the major parts of the brain that are mentioned in this book. There are many more, but just stick to the level of your textbook. The map of the brain that's on page 205, you don't have to be familiar with. I'm not going to have a diagram with all those parts labeled. It's just something to note that the specific parts of your brain are mapped to particular parts of the motor and sensory cortex. Then you get into the spinal cord and the transmission, the ascending and descending pathways in and out of the brain. That you should definitely be familiar with, and that's on page 207. Finally, you get into the differences in communication between the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, and the somatic nervous system, and that's all on page 209. So taking some time to understand the differences and why they're different. Structure and function is always hand in hand, so take some time to recognize those things. Finally, on the last little section of this chapter, you need to understand the nerves, and specifically the cranial nerves. You do need to know the cranial nerves, 1 through 12, their names and functions, and that's, again, all like page 215 to 214 in this book. You do not need to know the names of specific spinal nerves or any of the specific spinal nerves that are mentioned. And finally, on page 219, the reflex arc, you should be familiar with that whole interneuron, efferent, etc. that's mentioned. Otherwise, that is chapter 7 for you, so please keep me posted if you have any questions, and good luck to you guys this week. See ya. Bye-bye.